So, a couple of days ago, I went to the theater and I saw Aquaman, and I gotta admit, it was kind of fun. I went in with low expectations after seeing DC's most recent failure, Justice League, and I was surprised. It's far from great and hard to even consider good, but it's passable. First, I'd just like to talk about the things I enjoyed in this movie. I thought the world building was done well, and Atlantis looked beautiful. The CGI and visual effects were solid throughout the movie, much better than any recent DC movie that comes to mind. There's a scene after the first fight between Aquaman and his brother where his girlfriend Mera picks him up in a vehicle. There's a short chase scene through the underwater city. It's really cool, the lights and colors are vibrant, it's exciting, and it works perfectly with the retro synthwave track playing in the background. It's just a really fun scene. On that note, I'd just like to touch on the soundtrack. It's nothing special or memorable, it's just some cool brass sections that sounded a lot like Hans Zimmer. The Aquaman theme wasn't particularly original or anything crazy, but there are some weird pop songs thrown in during establishing shots. At one point, they play a Pitbull remix of Africa by Toto, which I don't think is something anyone has ever asked for. I don't generally like pop songs in movies, they ruin the immersion for me, unless done well, like in something like Guardians of the Galaxy or Baby Driver, where it fits in with the story nicely. Now, there's a couple really cool shots in this movie. There's a scene where the main characters are diving underwater with a flare, and you can see the fish people following them into the ocean, and I think that shot looks great. I didn't like the constant 360-degree shots that kept on popping up throughout the film. They would just spin the camera around the characters a couple of times, and it was overused to the point where the camera work was noticeable and it just got boring. For the most part, the acting was okay. Jason Momoa didn't really need to play a character. Amber Heard can't act. Morrison did a fine job playing the dad, I guess. Randall Park was a little over the top, in my opinion, but it's still cool to see him on the big screen. The humor seemed super forced throughout the movie, and for the most part wasn't all that funny. A lot of the jokes fell flat, and seemed as if they were added in reshoots. But my biggest problem by far with this film is its lack of surprise. Everything you see in this movie is what you get. And yes, I recognize that this is a cheesy comic book movie, and I'm not saying we need a crazy twist, but anyone could tell how the movie was going to end right from the beginning. Aquaman has the most bland and predictable character arc imaginable. At the beginning, he chooses to let this pirate gang leader die in front of his son, thus creating the villain, and then at the end, he learns from his mistakes and shows mercy after beating his brother. There was no real depth to his brother. He was really just a bad guy who adhered to the beliefs he was taught. At one point, one of the motivations for wanting to declare war with the surface people was the pollution that the surface people had put in the seas. And I would have liked to see a lot more looking into that. Maybe show some shots of what the pollution had done to Atlantis, what it had done to the ocean wildlife, rather than sort of just making Aquaman's brother a bad guy because he's evil. He could have even been a villain we could sympathize with, and those are the best kinds. Honestly, this movie could have benefited a lot from fleshing out its main villain. And the final act of this movie was really lackluster. After Aquaman finally finds the trident he's been searching for this whole movie, he shows up at the battle between his brother's army and the crab people. Yes, the crab people. It's a massive CGI battle with disposable armies and absolutely no stakes, and we all know who's going to win. I don't know many people who enjoy this kind of action in movies. It's the same reason the Avengers Age of Ultron final battle wasn't great either. We know our heroes will win, and we have to watch them take out pointless CGI things for half an hour. I do have the same problem with the Wakandan battle in Avengers Infinity War, but I can excuse that one. In that battle, the characters have a time limit and the villains are closing in. It's clear that they're running out of options and that creates tension. Yes, in Aquaman, if the Ocean Master killed the fourth king, he would get an army and be able to attack the surface, but it was made clear from the beginning that he wouldn't win. In this final battle, Aquaman only had one hurdle he needed to overcome. He was never knocked down, his opponent never got a leg up on him, and there was never any real suspense to that scene. Now, after Aquaman stopped that battle with his new special trident, he confronts his brother and they have a fight on the surface of the water. I don't really have any problems with this scene. The choreography is decent, and we get to see some cool moves that Aquaman learned from his mentor. So Aquaman inevitably wins, and the movie ends on a slow-mo shot of him jumping out of the water and holding his trident in the air. And this is the most cheesy comic book shot I have ever seen, and honestly I think that's the reason why a lot of people like this movie. It was self-aware of what it was and the kind of characters that it was using. Now, this movie was super long. I believe it was around 2.5 hours. There's some bits I think it could have cut, with characters posing and reciting unnecessary dialogue. And it is a corny comic book movie, and I appreciate that, but I just didn't enjoy the forced humor and the hordes of pointless CGI villains and characters lacking depth. I do have a lot of praise for this movie, mostly in regards to its visuals and the world it creates, but it's mostly just wasted potential. 6 out of 10. Fun movie, but it gets boring.